Okay guys, so today we're going to talk about the life of Lewis Latimer. Students will be able to check their biases in a historical review of a black American inventor to understand how racism and prejudice has impacted the field of science. On the next slide after this one, I would like you to go ahead and write 5 words that describe your ethnicity. You're going to try your best to use adjectives or descriptive words, but I'm not going to disparage you for using regular words, nouns, right? This is your identity. This is how you feel about it. While you guys go ahead and write in yours, I'm going to write in mine. So my heritage, my ethnicity, the first thing that comes to mind is the idea of mixed, right? I come from a mixed background. My parents are 2 different things. My father comes from Korea, and my mom comes from a country in the Caribbean known as Trinidad and Tobago. So I'm mixed. I feel it is confusing to be mixed. The reason I feel it's confusing to be mixed is because it's hard being 2 things at once. A lot of my friends, a lot of people I know just fall under the category of one race. I feel that to be a lot easier to pilot rather than having to figure out what 2 different races are and how they work together and all that stuff. It was a very confusing life growing up. The next thing I want to write is lonely. It was hard knowing that nobody else was mixed like me when I was growing up. I want to write the word unique. Because it was lonely, I also felt like nobody else was like me, which is the sense of being unique. It's something that I learned to take pride of later. And the last thing I want to say is beautiful. I love being what I am. I think it's the most amazing thing. I think I am so fortunate to have to come from 2 different heritages, to have 2 different cultures. I want you to think about the words that you wrote down. We're going to bring them back up. Lewis Latimer, you can see his picture here, was born on September 4th, 1848. He was born as one of 4 children. His mother's name was Rebecca Latimer, and his father's name was George Latimer. They were runaway slaves who escaped the slave state of Virginia, let me fix that up real quick, and moved to Chelsea, Massachusetts, where Lewis was born. What you're looking at here, let me go ahead and read it. $50 reward. Run away from the subscriber last evening, Negro woman Rebecca, in company, as is supposed, with her husband George Latimer, belonging to Mr. James B. Gray of this place. She's about 20 years of age, dark mulatto or copper colored, good countenance, which means she doesn't talk back or fight or argue, bland voice, and self-possessed and easy in her manners when addressed. This is the ad for George Latimer, who's Lewis Latimer's father. $50 reward. Run away on Monday night. A Negro man George, commonly called George Latimer. He is about 5 feet 3 or 4 inches high, 22 years of age, his complexion a bright yellow, is made of a compact, well-made frame, and is rather silent and slow-spoken. In the box to the right, I would like you to respond to the question, how does your parents' history affect yours? Now let me explain a little bit what I mean while you guys are writing or before you start to write. Some of you have been fortunate enough to sit with your parents and learn what they've gone through. Some of you might have even seen what they've gone through. Knowing what your parents have gone through and where they've come from, who they are, how does that affected you as a person? And that way you could read what I wrote really quick. On October 20th, 1842, George Latimer was walking home and he's noticed by a white man who is an associate of his former master in Virginia. He is arrested on account of larceny and taken into custody. Larceny is the crime of stealing, and in this case, as a runaway slave, George Latimer is being accused of stealing himself. I want you to imagine a country where the color of your skin means being free is equivalent to stealing yourself. Think about that. In a high-profile case, George Latimer is placed on a trial, which takes years to come to a close. It actually never closes. It's settled outside of court when Latimer goes to his former master, Mr. Gray, after raising enough money to buy his own freedom. So Lewis Latimer's father, George, bought his freedom in court. In court, he also said, his lawyer, who was Frederick Douglass, wrote, I asked Latimer if he had ever expressed to Gray or anyone else a willingness to go back to Norfolk. He said no, never. I would rather die than go back. Gray had just been there, trying to get me to say I will go back willingly. I turned my back on him and would not speak to him. He said if I would go back peacefully, there would be no more trouble. He would like me out of jail and serve me well. I then turned toward him and said, Mr. Gray, when you get me back to Norfolk, you may kill me. Nobody wants to be owned. Nobody wants to be a possession. Everybody wants to be free. And now learning about what George Latimer's father said to his owner, right, the slave master, I want you to again think about what your family, what your parents' history means to you. How has it shaped you? The next year following, I was hired out to the firm of Howyer and Brown to store groceries, meat, etc. One of them was a religious character, and I was treated very well. Served there 12 months, and I was the last of belonging to Dunstan, and my first master, Edward Mallory, got me again. He put me in William Mallory's hand, his brother, as if William M. owned me. James B. Gray, about the same time, bargained with Edward and William. William Mallory gave bill of sale to Gray in his name. This was in December 1839. J. B. Gray was a storekeeper. I manned his store as a clerk and did everything but reading and writing. He treated me very badly, as I was knocked and kicked about by him, beaten with a stick and cowhides. That's leather whips. About 2 months before I left, he thumped me with his fist about my head several times for not going to the store early enough. About a month ago, I was returning from my wife early in the morning, half an hour before sunrise. I met him in the market where he struck me with a stick across my jaw, which bruised the skin, so I had to cover my jaw. He did this because he said it was late. He followed me to the store and ordered me upstairs, beat me with stick across arm and back 15 or 20 times. He ordered me to go to the store in Roanoke Square after beating me with stick, in order to beat me with a cowhide. I would not go. I did not go to Roanoke Square until evening, and he sent for me to round to help hoist up meat. Did not say anything about the scrape in the morning. He was a very passionate man and would strike a white man as soon as colored. He has made all his money by selling liquor to colored people. He has bought stolen goods from colored people. I know this. Mr. Gray knows I know it. I first ran away about 2 years ago, overtaken before arriving in Baltimore. Gray put me up for auction, but then bought me in for $750. Treated me same as ever, or rather more severity, as he had a dislike for me. On the 4th last month, October, I started to run away again with my wife. I had been saving for some time. I arrived in Boston 7th last month, October, and on the same day, I met William Carpenter, who lived with Gray as tender in his store. I think he said word to Gray. He, Carpenter, kept a run shop in Norfolk. I was married 9 months ago, January. I have frequently thought of running away, even when I was a little boy. I frequently rolled up in my sleeve and asked, can this flesh belong to any man as horses do? Very few others would stay if they could get away. Some few, however, did say they did not wish to leave their masters. I expected if I was carried back, I would be beaten and whipped 39 lashes, and perhaps to be washed in pickle after. Washed in pickle is the act of treating a wound with salt water, brine. The idea is that the salt water will kill bacteria, and therefore your cuts wouldn't get infected. It is incredibly painful to put salt into a cut. There are other ways of treating a cut that doesn't have to cause pain. But again, because people can do whatever they want to another person's body, they don't have any care for another person's pain. It's cruelty is what they're doing. Lewis Latimer is 10 in 1857, and his world is about to change because of the decision of Stanford versus Scott, or the Dred Scott decision of 1857 under Chief Justice Taney. Dred Scott was a slave who belonged to a white man named Peter Blow. In 1832, Blow died and Scott was sold to another white man in St. Louis, Missouri. Scott's new owner, Dr. John Emerson, relocated to Chicago, Illinois with Scott, and then a town called Fort Snelling in Wisconsin. Dred eventually marries his wife, Harriet Scott. To make ends meet, Emerson rents Dred and Harriet out. This is the practice where slave masters can send their slaves to work for someone else in exchange for money. The slaves were never given any of the money in these exchanges. What you're looking at here is a map that's going to change over time. It's going to show you the development of free states against slave states. Your slave states are in your redder color, your free states are in your bluer color. And you can see that as America stretches out west, slavery grows alongside with it, as does the free states. This primes itself getting ready for Civil War. Absolutely. Emerson relocates to Louisiana. So right now, they were over here. They moved up to Wisconsin, and now Emerson is marrying a woman down here in Louisiana, one of the most terrible places for a slave to exist. Dred, Harriet, and now his two daughters follow them. When Emerson dies, Harriet and Dred sue for their freedom, and their case makes it all the way to the Supreme Court, the highest court in the land. The question is why? Why after all of this time did Dred Scott fight? He's now been a slave for years. He has children now. What you're looking at is one of the most horrifying parts of slavery. The ability of slave owners to strip African American families of everything. Slave families can be torn apart at the will of white masters, as they would often sell slaves, breaking apart families. You're seeing it here as a woman is showing the white master her child, reminding him that she's a mother and the person that she's selling is a father, and together they were a family. You're looking at over here a scene from court where a woman is being dragged away from her baby. Over here, you're looking at the condition of when they still were slaves and had children, working in the field while their children stands by itself, exposed, neglect. And here's the most horrifying scene. It's a woman holding her daughter, who she's probably never going to see again because she was just sold. As we continue to talk, I want you to think, how do these images make you feel? I want you to get deep, because this is a safe place. As you're writing, Chief Justice Taney sits on the head of the Supreme Court. The way the Supreme Court works is that as an American citizen, you take your problem to court. And if it doesn't work out, you have the option of taking it to the highest court in the land, the Supreme Court. Once they hear you out and make a decision, however, that decision is final. There is no higher legal power in America than the Supreme Court. Delivered on March 6, 1857, the court, by a 7-2 decision, held that blacks were not and could not be citizens of the United States. And, as a result, Mr. Dred Scott lacked standing to sue in federal courts. That means he had no business being in court because he is black. The court also found that Scott had never been free, finding that Congress exceeded its authority when it forbade or abolished slavery in the territories, invalidating the Missouri Compromise. Having found a lack of standing, the second issue should not have been addressed by the court. I want to repeat that. Having found a lack of standing, this second issue should not have been addressed by the court. This means that this was something extra that Chief Justice Taney said himself, without approval of the rest of the Supreme Court. His words, however, in the final decision, made it law throughout America. Congress was now unable to say whether a state was free or slave. It would be up for the state to say. But I want you to think, it's 1857. Lewis Latimer is now 10 years old, the son of George Latimer. George Latimer bought his freedom in court. Now it's saying that he has no right to be in court because he is not a citizen of America, because black people are not citizens of this country. So the question is, if slaves have no rights in America, what does this mean for the Latimer family? All things considered, with what went on with the father, George Latimer. At the age of 10, George Latimer leaves his family forever to save his family. He's running from something called the Fugitive Slave Act. The Fugitive Slave Act, when placed next to Judge Taney's Dred Scott decision, results in the hunting of black people in the free states. As slaves ran up north to find their freedom, they were now able, white people were now able to leave the South, go up north, and hunt them down. Can you imagine being too scared to leave your house out of fear of being captured and re-enslaved? George Latimer is scared. His family, including his children, who were born free, will all be made into slaves. And George Latimer is a man who is very familiar with slavery. He is a man who was born into it, who lived it for a long time until finally becoming free. A family divided. Lewis and his brothers are sent to live on a farm school where they are taught agriculture. Lewis's sisters are sent to live with a family friend. History and biographies do not say if the Latimer family ever comes back together. From all my research I've looked at, it never says that Lewis Latimer and his family find each other again. They remain separated. I accumulated the top 5 words from our classes, 701, 702, and 703. There's a couple of repeats here, but these were the words that I saw were most frequent. Confident, helpful, beaches, farms, amazing food, caring, brave, outstanding, warriors, kings and queens. But my problem is, these words are great, but they lack. There's certain words here that I'm missing. This is a repeat, so let's take a look at this. Where's the word intelligent? Where is the word capable? Where is the word beautiful? When we talk about ourselves, we don't realize what society has done. We don't realize that we live in a world that's determined to make us see that we're less than because of the color of our skin and the way we look. And you might not see how it affects you, but this is why I love this activity. You're not just describing yourself now. You're describing everyone that belongs to your ethnicity. And it is great that you love the fact that your food is great, and you're helpful people, and you're caring, and you're proud. But you are also intelligent, and you are also beautiful. You are also important. I want you to think about what it means what your ethnicity means to you. Why it's something to be proud of. Why it's something to boost. You guys were wonderful today. Amazing. Amazing class. Okay? The words that you guys sent me were so deep and so cutting, and a lot of the answers that you guys sent me were so deep. And I cannot wait to share this with the rest of the people who are going to take a look at our bulletin board and even send it to people so they can see how amazing it is when you realize what you're worth.